So do you have blind spots? What if your biggest blind spot could become your greatest strength? Our speaker today knows about blind spots. His resulted in brain surgery. It changed him so much that he wrote a book entitled "Sometimes It Does Take a Brain Surgeon." He grew up on a tomato farm in Northwest Ohio, and he was the youngest of 10 kids. And as a former IT salesman, Brian is now a speaker and author while working at the Ohio State School for the Blind. He has a clear focus, and it is to help others identify and move beyond their blind spots. You could say he's on a mission. Since his brain surgery in 2011, he has given a TED Talk, he's published a book, he's ran a half marathon, all as a part of his effort to inspire others. And Brian is here today to share his ideas that will help us move beyond our blind spots without the need for brain surgery. He loves people, but no, he's not winking at you. Please join me in welcoming Brian Wagner.
Sherm, Ohio. Can you wink? Can you? I've learned some people can't wink. I, on the other hand, can't stop. How about you people online? Can you wink? I know you can. Well, for me, winking means a lot. So over the next hour, I want to encourage you all to wink with me. Wink when you hear things that you really like, or maybe find something that you can use. Because there are going to be points, we call them winks of wisdom. Not that I'm wise, but I am old. But if you have those winks of wisdom, every once in a while, just wink for me. And when you do, realize that that is something you can use. Now, my hope is that you wink at least once during this next hour. Honestly, I hope you wink so much you get an eye cramp. But I've learned to manage, or to know my expectations. Do you know what makes you unique? Do you know what sets you apart? On March 4th of 2011, I woke up and I couldn't see. I stumbled my way to the bathroom and I flipped on the light switch. Nothing seemed to happen. When I turned towards the mirror, I could see a sliver of light from the bottom of my eyes, but my eyelids wouldn't open. My face was swollen. My eyes don't go in the same direction. I was blind. My wife heard the commotion and she came downstairs. Brian, what happened? I don't know. As soon as we were able to, we rushed to the ER. And in the ER, after hours and hours of tests and hours of waiting, the doctor came in. Mr. Wagner, it appears as though one of the this cavernous malformation, it's a malformed blood vessel. One of those has bled, and it's putting pressure on the nerves that control your vision. We're recommending you have brain surgery. Brain surgery? They told me never let someone operate on my brainstem. What's changed? The problems you have are only going to become worse and more frequent. Worse and more frequent. Worse and more frequent? Well, time out. So this whole worse and more frequent thing, I had been diagnosed with a cavernous malformation in my brainstem in 1992. And worse and more frequent was true because in November of 2020, that great year, I had another brain bleed from another cavernous malformation that had bled, and it bled putting pressure on nerves that control my tongue. Wow, what a great thing for a speaker to have. As you can imagine, that's a little nerve-wracking. But, so I have a little bit of a speech impediment. I have numbness down the entire right side of my face. I stumble over words. But everybody stumbles over words. I just have a doctor's note. Anyway, so as a 10-year-old boy, before all this in Northwest Ohio, you heard the story of me growing up on a tomato farm. I used to play football by myself because I was one of those kids that didn't want to farm. Now, all my brothers and sisters would be on the farm, and they still are today. But I would be on the football field in the front yard. So I would take this hike from the virtual center. And I would be, hut one, hut two, hike. And I'd hike the ball to myself. And then I'd hand the ball off to myself. And if I wanted to switch it up, I would throw the ball to myself. Oddly enough, I usually scored. But not always. Well, there was this one time that I was out in the front yard playing football by myself, and my mom came running out. My mom was holding this piece of paper. She said, Brian! Stop playing! Stop playing! I've got something for you. It's the registration for the Elmwood Royals football camp. You've always wanted to play football, and you've always wanted to be an Elmwood Royal. This is your chance. Mom was a little more excited than I was. But I was excited. I got to play football with my friends. That's all I ever wanted to do. Day 3 of that football camp came, and I was blindsided. I was rushed to the ER again. And there they determined that I had hydrocephalus. That's cephalus. I was 10. So they determined that I needed to have a shunt put in. It was a shunt that I still have even to this day. It drains fluid, excess cranial fluid from my brain to my abdomen. After that, they said that I wouldn't be able to play football anymore. So just like that, my dreams were dashed. Do you remember who you wanted to be when you grew up? Well, for me, it was a football player. How many of you would say HR manager? There may be some. But anyway, I'll never forget, shortly thereafter, we went to my grandma's house. And there at grandma's, you expect to walk into grandma's and get some sage advice, maybe get some cookies. So I walked in and she asked me how I was doing. I said, Grandma, I'm really upset because I'm not going to be able to play football anymore. And not only did she give me some sage advice and some cookies, but she also gave me a little pity. But she said, Brian, let me tell you 4 things. And these may be winks of wisdom. But that first thing is, she said, Brian, life is going to turn out differently than you plan. Now, that may be for all of you that didn't say HR managers. So life is going to turn out differently than you plan. Always be open to reimagining your life. She went on to say, find what makes you unique. And that's why I asked you that question early on. What makes you unique? What makes you different? And then finally, use that to make someone's life better. If you can do that, the world is yours. You'll have eternal happiness. Grandma was smart. Now, I was 10 years old. I had no idea what to do with this information at that time. But I knew there was something to that. So back to the ER. Worse and more frequent. Worse. So I was blind, and it was going to get worse. I was petrified. But they said there's one guy that we recommend you go and see. One specialist, one doctor. Are there times in your life where there's just one for you? There's just one person? Maybe it's a coach or a mentor, possibly a teacher, maybe a spouse, maybe it's your employer, maybe it was one of your employees that showed you something you hadn't seen before. Remember that name. Put it in your head. Now, we did have surgery in Phoenix, Arizona, and on April 1st, no fooling, I had brain surgery. There was all this buildup to it, but then just like that, it was over. Now, I did have a little curtain closer assistance from my brother. I mean, there's some things that nobody needs to see. But the next day, after having surgery, one 24-hour period after having surgery, I was discharged from the hospital with a little bottle of extra strength Tylenol. That's true. Well, I came home from Phoenix, and I wanted to get my life back normal. There was everything I wanted to do. I just wanted to have a normal life. I wanted to have my sight back. Well, what I got back was vision. I should have been more specific with what I asked for. But I had encouragers. And one of those encouragers was my wife, Connie. She encouraged me to go for walks. Now, I had no idea she wanted me down such treacherous terrain. I mean, there's ledges on the left and ledges on the right. But then there's undulations. I have to say it slow because I can't say it well. It's a fun word to say. Undulations? Words like that are fun. Anyway, everything changed when I did two things. First, if I actually admitted, because I needed to admit that I was blind. If I admitted that I was blind and took her hand, that walk became much easier. But if I went down that sidewalk the other way, everything changed. My perspective changed. Those undulations changed. Much like you in your jobs as HR managers. Whatever the case, the people you're managing, or customers you're working with, or partners you have, if you take their perspective, everything changes. There's always two sides to there's probably more than two sides to every story. So consider how you can do that yourself and have a different perspective. Now, I mentioned I had encouragers. One of my other encouragers was my daughter, Jess. I want to ask, before I'll just read the letter. So the letter is special to me, and I'd like to read it to you. She wrote me a letter that Father's Day. She was 13 years old at the time. She said, "Dear Dad, Happy Dad's Day. I hope you have a great day because you definitely deserve it. All the carbs, the TV commercials always say, my dad's the best. But they're all lying. You're the best ever. Sure, other people's dads are great. I mean, they're younger than you, they're sportier, and they're funner." I'm looking for the compliment here. Here we go. But you've got something they don't have. Bravery. Even after everything you've been through, you still get out of bed in the morning. You still joke around and play with us and cook on the grill, even though you only have half of one good eye. But you do more still. You teach me that even though you go through the toughest, most grueling things, that if you just believe that God is right there with you through everything, believe that everything turns out okay in the end, you're going to make it out alive. Not always unscathed, but alive. And give me that hope, that sense of belief. Well, I'd take that over a dad with 2 good eyes any day. Love, 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 Jess. Do you remember the last time you received a letter like that? I got a better question. Do you remember the last time you wrote a letter like that? Well, that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take 3 minutes here in another few seconds. We're going to take 3 minutes and we're going to write a letter. We're going to write a letter to that one. Remember that one you looked at? One that you thought of that made that difference for you at one time in your life? That's what I want you to do. You can use this format or not, but the format that Jess gave me was, she told me who I was. She told me not to stop comparing myself to other people, because other people's dads are great. But she also told me about my faith and what I meant to her. So, for the next 3 minutes, I would like for you to take out a pad of paper and a pencil and write your letter. Thank you.
The lights went out, he could no longer see. In an instant, Brian's life changed drastically. For 6 months, he lived in the dark, trying not to lose his spark. But sometimes blessings come unexpectedly. The light returned when he regained partial sight. His spark fanned into flame and lit the night. Brian came to a life-changing decision, because sometimes you must go blind to gain vision. So keep winking with Wagner. Identify your own blind spots. Winking with Wagner. Making the best of what we've got. Winking with Wagner means enduring the pain we all go through. Keep winking with Wagner, 'cause he's got his good eye on you. Says you've got to laugh even when it's hard to smile. Show gratefulness, though you may feel it's not worthwhile.